Looks like we're live.
Cool.
Looks like we're live.
There we go. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning. Happy Monday morning.
Happy Monday. Happy Valentine's Day.
Happy Valentine's Day.
Well, today we've got a rather large topic, transcendence, embracing the next evolution of you.
No
Actually,
biggie.
I'd like to start because we haven't really spoken much in the podcast since the beginning about our own journeys and where we've come from. So I thought that we might start today by a brief overview of who we are and where we've been and why we're doing what we're doing, or some version of that.
Okay,
Because there's
perfect.
been a lot of transcendence to get to this point, right?
Have. Yeah, absolutely. Did,
Do you
did
want
you
to
want
start?
me to?
Yes, go. This is
Sure.
Asha.
Um, nothing like being put on the spot and to tell your life story to get you a little bit nervous. But I guess for me, it's it's been an always evolution to have gotten to this point. So I think really when I decided to do Light Tower, which is my own personal development company, that actually teaches models of transcendence, um, it it was the realization and the feeling that everything in my life had really led me, or at least felt like it had led me to that exact point. And the point where you feel like you can't deny what keeps coming up for you any longer. So in terms of a little bit more concrete background for people, um, my background is in the psychological sciences. So I went straight into a Bachelor of Psychology and did my honours year, and then worked for a year in between as a counsellor before going back and doing my Masters of Clinical Psychology, and then worked as a psychologist my adult life. And that what where this really comes full circle for me is always having that deep desire to help and to really understand what was going on for people and then how to help transition them out of that. And I just have this very distinct memory, and it was shortly after graduating and working with clients that I had this feeling of being a drop in the ocean, or what the modality that I had chosen to help people feeling like a drop in the ocean. And that's not to take away the power of assisting one person or helping one person, because you can never truly understand the ripple effect that that has. And in that time frame for me, I had also experienced some work with people who had encountered some of the worst suffering and the deepest acts of what human beings are capable of in a depraved way. And that then brought about my own existential crisis, because I was very directly put into contact with, well, if this is just a small pool, and the small pool that I'm working with, you extrapolate that out to a global level, the level of depravity, the destruction, what human beings are capable of, and how they can treat one another. That was soul crushing for me to feel. And I couldn't really understand, having come into contact with that weight, how on earth anything would be big enough to make an impact that I felt was so needed. So, so that was a really challenging point early in my career in having this sense of, well, what we're doing is a drop in the ocean, and being aware of the accumulative suffering if you expand that out. And I remember talking to my supervisor, a bunch of other psychs, and no one could really give me an answer, or an answer that soothed me in any particular way. And then my brother came home and he was like, Ash, what's up? Like, you're not yourself. And there, at that point, there were kind of things that, how do you even articulate it? And anyway, what he identified for me is that my empathy is my version of being blind, in that it categorizes the way that I engage with the world, and the world engages back. So as much as my empathy makes me who I am, and gives me a strong skill set, at that point in time in my journey, it also meant that I was equally getting cut by it and equally feeling the weight of it, because I was so deeply empathic. And he gave me this beautiful metaphor about the imaginal cells of the butterfly, which is where you actually go through the transformation of these imaginal cells starting to build up within you. And it's when they reach critical load that they have taken over the old cells, that you become the new version of yourself. And he just gave me that hopefulness that if I continue down the path and allow the transformation to occur within, that something of beauty and beyond logic is possible. And they were some of my early learnings of transcendence, you know, where you submit to the journey, you embrace the hardship and the suffering in knowing and hope and in faith that if I simply continue on, something seemingly miraculous is possible. And then in terms of this ever evolving paradigm, the next kind of crisis point for me where I knew things had to change was I had delivered therapy for, I've now been delivering therapy for over 10 years. And when Corona hit, it was like everything that I have been doing in the background, in working one-on-ones, in developing that skill set, there didn't seem to be a greater time than now than to share that in a more open forum, which led me straight to you.
People need it more than ever before.
Exactly.
People need your learnings and your sharing of your evolution and your experiences of transcendence. They need it now, because everyone is in and the past couple of years have been in such a state of what is going on outside of me, what is going on within me, and what is this discomfort about.
Exactly. And so then my next cycle of evolution was surrendering to the process of becoming this version of myself who's willing to show up and talk live and share openly. And that's been its own metamorphosis. And you've been such a pivotal part of that for me, in embracing not only who I am, but embracing the process of growth can look this way too. It can be fully expressive, it can be fully open, it can be transparent, and there's its own level of beauty in doing that. So that's probably so in terms of who I am, my background, essentially it's been from being highly aware of other people's suffering my entire life, turning to the sciences, recognizing the edges of common practice within that, and then the evolution of how do I take that knowledge and all of my life experiences and put it in a forum where we can have as many ripple effects as possible at once.
Beautiful. Yay to ripple effects.
Yeah. And how about you? Your turn.
My turn. Okay. I've spoken about my journey, the pivotal points in my journey a fair bit, so I'm not going to spend too much time on the early stages of that. But basically, I've worked in the family business for a lot of my life, and I reached a point within that where I realized that it was doing me no good. And so I resigned from the family business, and in that period of a couple of years, I also divorced my ex-husband, or we decided to separate. And those pivotal points were they were such large parts of my identity that I had no choice but to just surrender to the change, because and to really open my eyes and my mind and my heart and my soul to who I am um, without those titles and without and that what the main thing that I wanted to talk about today, from my point of view, about transcendence and becoming the next evolution of yourself, is the grief involved in that, because not we're very attached to the old versions of ourselves and what they mean to other people, and what they mean in validating who we think we are. So when we let go of a past version of ourselves, or we make a conscious decision to step in a new direction, there is a lot of grief that goes with that. And for me, when that happens, and it's a cycle that happens repeatedly, and anyone who's been on any kind of growth journey consciously will know that sometimes you have to let go of people, you have to let go of jobs, relationships, situations to move forward. And allowing that grief to come up, and being a sobbing mess with snot everywhere, and and honoring your own grief in that process, I believe is important, because if you pretend that that's not happening, then you're kind of disallowing the transcendence. So there was a lot of grief involved in those early days about my position in the family, my position as a wife and mother, and what did that all mean? So that was a big, steep learning curve in my first lot of conscious transcendence. And I realized through that process, you were talking about empathy. I realized how empathic I was and how much I cared about helping other people. And so it became really important to me to share my journey, because I realized that my poems and my voice and my artwork and my story are tools and experience that can help other people if I'm brave enough and vulnerable enough to share them. So I remember the day that I unpacked my first deck of oracle cards, the sample deck, and it became a reality that my soul that I had poured out onto these little bits of card were going to be held by other people. And that was extremely vulnerable and scary. And but that helps me, how do I explain it? When I see people on Facebook doing card readings from my cards, or I see people posting a photo of one of my cards and what it means for them, it's this, oh, I'm helping in their transcendence, in their journey, in their next evolution of themselves, because they've resonated with something in me that they needed to hear at that particular time or feel at that particular time. So don't underestimate the value in being vulnerable and sharing your journey, even if it's with your neighbor. Like, you don't have to get online and talk about it live like we do, but there's so much joy in helping other people along that path.
Yes. Yes.
Mm.
And what comes up for me is how humbling that can be when you see that, because part of the conscious creation that I feel that we've surrendered to is, and we speak a lot about intention and how powerful intention is, and you can hold that with the reverence that it deserves, and at the same time, when you witness it in action, for me there can be a complete dissolvement, because seeing it and seeing that come to fruition, it's kind of beyond belief. You know, and obviously if I'm in a professional capacity, you won't see me dissolve. You're like, that's, you know, but if, you know, if I get to witness it and in my own space, there's just something incredibly humbling about that, the power of intention, the power of sharing. And I guess that you know, kind of brings me to one of the points that I think is really worth reiterating, is that part of that grief journey, so much of what can cause us suffering is the idea that we're alone, or that somehow our pain is greater or more or so specific that others wouldn't understand. And this idea that, you know, well, I've just got to shove it down and not talk about it because other people won't cope, or they won't relate, or it will make them feel uncomfortable. And if you have, like you say, the bravery and the vulnerability to actually share that, it's amazing how universal the feelings and sentiments and also then access that part of the human spirit that wants to triumph and wants to see others triumph, how present that actually is.
Yeah, that's right. The decision to be vulnerable is one of the most powerful decisions that you'll make. And as you were talking, I was thinking about the phrase "better out than in." But it is actually your emotions and your feelings and your transcendence and your the bumpy ride that is your evolution is better played out outside of you. You know, like obviously in certain circumstances, like if you're working in a professional capacity, or but if you surround yourself with souls who will hold space for you when you're a blubbering mess and you just need to move through something and feel safe and held and housed, because you will then in turn do that for them. So it's really important not to shove down that grief, to actually let it out and write it out. Writing is a really great one as well.
It's such a beautiful point, and there's a little part of me that's a little tentative to take it this way. However, it's so powerful and relevant that I kind of feel like it would be
Do it. Go, Dash.
do it. Okay. So some of the previous discussions that we've also had with Elizabeth Eleanor have been around the spiritual and religious aspects that come into transcendence. And a big part of how I've put my models together is the intersect of all these disciplines, and to try to isolate what is unified among them. And what you were just talking about there, from religious aspects, it's the power of the spoken word to turn chaos into order. And that's in the first lines of Genesis in the Bible, in terms of God spoke existence into being. He said, "Let there be light," and there was light, and that was good. So this using language to express, to articulate, to get what was in out, whether it's through the written or verbal, you are speaking or articulating what feels chaotic within into order, into something that is actually then digestible, and digestible for others as well. So it's in the articulation that what seems unmanageable becomes manageable again. And the reason why I bring it up from that perspective is that it seems it has been carried throughout the history of evolution, and there is something seemingly undeniable about the power of articulating what is within in the purest, truest format you can conceive at the time.
Absolutely. And when you are practiced at doing that, you will look back over your writings, particularly if you're starting to write what's going on within you and get it out onto the page. You'll read over it later and go, wow, did I actually write that? Because it actually gets to a point where it flows so freely that it's coming from another place.
Yeah.
And so it's a really beautiful way. And if you're not a writer, maybe like a dictaphone or voice memos, speaking it out, or talking to a friend so that you can have it relayed back to you. But I found with my poetry, the more I wrote, the more practice I got at it. And then I would take a poem that I had written and read over it like 10 times that day, because that was me getting to know the inner workings of myself.
Yeah.
And that is really powerful when you know yourself to that extent. You know your patterns, you know your flaws, you know exactly what you're transcending from and to, because it's undeniable, like it's there.
Yes.
Yeah.
I love that. So I'm aware of how quickly time is absolutely flying. So for our listeners, because obviously transcendence is such a big topic, it can kind of be like, where do I start? Where do I start putting one foot in front of the other? And how do I even know that is transcendence? So as a starting place, how would you encourage them to start?
I would start each day with taking 5 or 10 minutes for yourself to do some kind of daily practice. So if the word meditation scares you, you can just call it stillness. Sit in your own stillness for a few minutes, write for a few minutes. Some kind of outside influence or outside, like a pack of oracle cards, or a really great book written by someone that you admire, that you just open at a random page, will always provide what you need to hear and read that day. Just take 10 minutes to start tuning into you and understanding those patterns and understanding your own evolution. Like 10 minutes a day.
Yeah, gorgeous. I love that. There's so much power in that. And I guess that probably what you just said then, tune in, takes me to the central point that I think belongs with this, particularly on where to start, is the trap is to think that the answers that we're seeking lie outside of ourselves. And that's the illusion of the modern world that we live in. If I gain this outcome, if I secure this goal, if I attain this, then somehow I will arrive. You won't. It will just be the next
There's no
loop
arriving.
of distraction. So it's turning the compass from being outside of you to inside of you, because the answers that you seek on the transcendent journey are all about who am I? And that means taking off every societal conditioning that we've ever had, which also is inherently tied to the grief, allowing that to be suspended, to turn inward, to go, okay, if I become as truthful as I possibly can with myself, where do I feel compelled? So compelled in the sense that there's something here for me to garner. There's something
What is the lesson?
yes,
What is the lesson that I'm learning right now?
yes.
Have I learnt it before 500 times? Probably.
Yes. And it's when we can identify the meaning, and then a meaning that compels us forward, that's where you'll find fulfillment. But it always comes from within. So the main starting point I would suggest is recognizing, catching yourself when your focus is on an outward success, and redirecting it inward to what has meaning for me, what naturally lights me up, where do I get a sense of joy and fulfillment, where is my greatest sense of suffering, and what is it there, and how do I heal that wound, and then what's the lesson from that wound? Because once I can attain the lesson from that, that's where the freedom and the next evolution of you comes. So there is no expectation that transcendence feels good. Quite, it can be incredibly beautiful and awe-inspiring and wonderful.
Once
And
you've
you've reached, that's right.
Once
That's
you've
right.
generally.
Once you've released the equal and opposite
Yeah.
suffering and weight, and you only do that from the inward journey. And then obviously surrounding yourself with a support team, and ideally practiced hands that are a little further along the path so they can go, oh yeah, that part, that's really steep right there, and you kind of want to maneuver through it this way as best you can, because it's in that shared learning, and one, that you don't feel alone, two, that you feel understood, three, you feel supported, and four, it brings back that hope, faith, and trust that there is a way forward. And that's, to speak metaphorically, tends to be the light that will carry you out of the depths of that darkness in that moment. So all of this is really profound. And obviously anything that is ever said is to be run through your own lens, what resonates for you. And yeah, and then I find transcendence is often also down to a timing of there will have been a catalyst.
Yeah.
I don't particularly know anyone that goes, you know what I feel like you know, so
Yes,
it,
I wrote this morning, when I did my downloads for this, your emotions could be heightened, more agitated, and then they reach a peak when the release happens. So if you're feeling really uncomfortable in your body, if you're feeling like everything makes you angry, or you're triggered easily, those kinds of things, then I'd say you're on the brink of
mm,
releasing something that that has been holding you back until now.
mm, a bit of a breakthrough. And with that wave of agitated to a peak, then the release, in anticipation is everything, you will come down and then you will dip below baseline, which is the reintegrate reintegration phase and the recovery phase before you come back up to a baseline. And the, you know, in actually releasing it, you will come up to a higher baseline, and it's the anticipation that that's what growth and grief looks like. So I can always hold myself kindly whilst I move through that, and I'm not caught off guard. And because the first thing the mind will try and do is go, if I'm feeling this way, there must be something wrong with me. No, that is what growth looks like, and you're doing that whilst you do this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Beautiful.
I love the way you explain it. I never get sick of it.
Thank you, same. It's for you.
All right, well, it's 9:33, so I think we should leave it there. Thank you for joining me again, Asha.
Thank
Um,
you.
and we are going to be putting out there, for those of you who are interested in in becoming more connected with us, not just watching this every week. We're launching our first product together, dun, 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 which is VIP chats. So if you're interested in learning the details of that subscription-based program, let us know and we can send it all through to you. But we'll be starting to talk about it and finalizing things with that this week and doing a big launch. So we're very excited.
Yes. Yes, looking forward to it.
Sending love to everyone.
Bye for
Bye.
now.